everyone. Awesome to have you here today. So excited to have another day talking about different philosophers. And today, as with all other days, we try and do this every Thursday. I'm going to draw a card from this tarot deck, and we're going to see what the cards tell us today, and then we'll learn a little bit about that philosopher, their philosophy from the accompanying book. And so please join the party. It'll be fun. Today we have, let's see who we draw. Just do a little shuffle. For this deck, it doesn't matter whether or not you're using a reversal or not. There's no concept of reverse because it's really more of an educational tarot deck, but I really like sort of the impromptu aspect of being able to learn in real time with y'all. So let's see what we've got. Let's see. Our card today is our card today is Friedrich Nietzsche. Was that life? Well then, once more. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Nietzsche. I want to continue our pattern of looking up the correct pronunciation for our new friends. Let's see. Let's see what it says.
Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. Been saying it wrong my whole life. Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
A little slower.
Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
Okay, so Nietzsche. Here we go. Our card for the day, Friedrich Nietzsche. So, let's see what Nietzsche had to say. The sort of theme of this philosopher is self-creation. Yeah, I also have not heard it pronounced Nietzsche. Hi, Rex is awesome. So excited to have you here today. Thanks, Goober, for joining us. For those who don't know, Goober is my mod as well. So he's here to help us make sure we've got a good conversation going. So very excited to have everyone here. Now, let's look up Friedrich Nietzsche. As I said earlier, I am using this accompanying manual for this deck. So lots of credit to the author. I really, really like this deck. I found it to be really helpful in exploring philosophy. So let's see what we have. So Friedrich Nietzsche was born in 1844 in Germany and died in 1900. As we said before, the theme of this section is self-creation. And so it says that he asks us to be better versions of ourselves by following instinct. To become who we are without apology. Oh, I love that. Oh, and this is where the Übermensch comes from, the overman. Nietzsche had a habit of referring to himself as the Antichrist. Seems like he has got a bit of a contrarian vibe going. So I'm sure that will prove interesting. I guess for y'all, do you ever feel like it's challenging to kind of break out and define space for yourself? Because it seems like if you're going to refer to yourself as the Antichrist, you probably, like, I feel like Nietzsche was just trying to be antagonistic at that point, especially in, like, 19th century Germany. Like, seems like a choice. It says that he asks us to throw away all inhibitions and moral guides and embark on a path of our own self-creation. Yeah, Antichrist, right? Like, that's so interesting that, like, he was just like, no, like, in order for me to get you to understand how serious it is that you fulfill your own destiny, I'm just going to refer to myself as the Antichrist so that we can like start at peak controversy. It's just a lot, right? Like, that's a choice. I don't know. So it does seem like we're getting a little bit into the more hedonistic side of the movement. So let's see how we go. He calls on us to trust in the forces of our instinct and will, and to take a leap of faith, and basically dance near the abyss instead of going for certainty. Yeah, it's so hard to carve out space for yourself. The fear of rejection, I think that's really real. I was talking to someone at lunch today, and it was really interesting. They're an executive, and they had a mentor who's like 22, and their 22-year-old mentor, this is pretty like conservative company, showed up with like a nose ring and was like, what should I do? And the executive was just like so overwhelmed by their self-confidence and sort of who they were, and not like aligning to the cultural norms of the firm that they were working at, that like the executive was like, I don't know, just keep being you. Like, there's limited time. My generation is almost done. Like, here's the reins. And I thought that was like really impactful, because I remember as a wee baby in corporate, like, carving out space for yourself is so hard. And I think that corporate for so long has like really struggled with diversity, that like having space that represents everyone who's joining, and not just like physical diversity but neurodiversity, and having like space for that. I think so, like previously under an organization man structure, it was really about creating a sense of like homogeneity and like uniform production for the firm. And I'm really loving this opportunity that I think was reflected in this executive's approach to mentoring, that like we are so much stronger bringing the creative, diverse space, people into the space, and really like having seats at the table instead of having to like, I know when I was young, it felt like I was really like elbowing in, trying to make that space at the table for myself. And I'm really excited for us to have an opportunity to really leave space and to call people to that space. And I think that this idea of the Übermensch, right, the overman, that you're just like, you're so into who you are and what you bring individually, that Nietzsche speaks to, I think that's really powerful. I think there's also sort of a hard side of this, and I think Rex is awesome, you're kind of calling to this, right? Like, the fear of rejection can be really palatable, And Nietzsche goes so far as to like really include the idea of like what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And I struggle with that idea. I think that like, yes, resiliency is important, but resiliency is not the same as like getting to the point of almost like overkill. And I think it's a really like, I think actually resistance training is a good example where like if you just jump all in, you're gonna tear a muscle and be out of training for a period of time instead of like building at the edge of resistance. And so I do think that there's probably a balance there that's not really reflected in at least this short passage from Nietzsche. Let's see. When people are vulnerable and take up space, they have the opportunity to find community. That's, yeah, exactly. I think that's really the strength there. And in finding community, we make sort of like better decisions collectively than we can individually, sort of the strength of the masses. And I think we've gotten to like a little bit of an inflection point in society where we've been really focusing on the individual, and I think that ends up putting individuals against each other for like some perceived superior skill set, when in reality, like if we work collectively, the neurodiversity and physical diversity allows us to sort of play to each other's strengths and really come to an overall community that is stronger instead of just pitting each other against one another. Yeah, I think that's really true. Do you find that it's easy to find community in this moment? Rex is awesome. While they think about that, let's see. Yeah, so like Nietzsche goes on to say he only enjoys what is good for him. His pleasure, his desire ceases when the limits of what is good for him are overstepped. Yeah. I think that like this might just go like a little too far for me, and maybe this is where the like discomfort with Nietzsche comes in. That like it gets to kind of to like too hedonistic, where we're not like using our own sort of like there's a beauty in stability. Like dancing near the abyss every day is pretty exhausting, and so. But yeah, he knows how to turn serious accidents to his own advantage. Whatever does not kill him makes him stronger. Like, I don't want to almost die every day. Yeah, see, that's what I think. Like, doing things that you genuinely enjoy and bring joy, like, that's different than just, like, pure danger. And I think that there's, like, a piece of this with Nietzsche that's really resonating about, like, saying no to things that do not bring us joy. Let's just go for full Marie Kondo. Maybe that's it. Like I need Nietzsche as a decluttering personality, just like a little bit toned down. I think like finding and then applying Marie Kondo to people. I don't know if that's the best thing I've ever said, but I think that like setting boundaries and really identifying those things that bring us individually happiness and joy, or like a sense of purpose. I think like Nietzsche is telling us that like that pursuit is worthy, and like philosophically, if we look inward for those things that are saying yes to oneself, is a quote that I just saw, then we can kind of, to your point, Rex is awesome, like find great people who are also seeking that sort of self-empowerment. And I think that's really where like the magic of humanity really sits, right? Is in saying yes to the like most authentic version of ourselves and then finding that resonate in other people. And I think it also gets us past the sometimes really harmful like surface level baloney of like this person is or isn't this. Like if we really are saying yes to the things that are most important to us, then like those are typically like so deep that like you can really kind of skip all of the outside and just like the person who told me the story about the mentee that had a nose ring. Like, why were they noticing the nose ring? Like, was the nose ring that important? And I think, like, that was the part that really resonated for me, was, like, I felt like it was really cool to hear a story of, like, space being made for the 22-year-old. At the same time, I wonder why, like, their nose ring was even noticed, right? Like, how do we get to a place where, like, the thing we see is the, like, just that, like, the outward manifestation of that joy, Rex is awesome, that you're talking about, that, like, really pulls people together in community, and like, particularly people who are self-same in the pursuit of, like, being there. Yeah, Goober, I agree. I think Nietzsche is alienating because of the extreme, but I wonder, like, this is kind of a piece of philosophy that I struggle with. Like, I think part of philosophy is posing questions intentionally, like in an intentionally extreme way, to sort of pick apart the value and criteria of them. Yeah, seeking out dangers just feels so problematic. Like, I don't want to be in a place where I'm really struggling to respond. Like, that feels like a place where you're just always in reaction mode. Like, you're putting yourself in situations that force reaction. And in many ways, protection of our, like, sense of joy, to Rex's awesome's point, like, protection of that joy, I think, requires proactive work, right? Like, a routine is made out of a proactive choice, not a reactive choice. And I think a lot of folks who I have found, like, manifest joy in their lives have, like, a routine that they stick to. And in some ways, like, being in a place where you can build resistance training requires some semblance of homeostasis and, like, a baseline. And so if you're just teetering on the edge of crisis every moment, like, you're not really building true resilience, because you don't have a baseline of development, right? And so, like, what do you measure from? But yeah, so he has this idea called love of one's fate, amor fati. He's, like, really focused on the idea of free spirits, which I think sounds nice, but in reality, like, there's a quote here that says, "The ideal of the most high-spirited, alive, and world-affirming human being who has not only come to terms and learned to get along with whatever was and is, but who wants to have what was and is repeated into all of eternity, shouting insatiably, 'What was that life? Well then, once more.'" I mean, it sounds nice, but it also sounds, like, nice in the way that, like, going to a college party is nice. Like, sure, it is nice in that moment. It is an experience I am glad I had. I don't think that one can go to college parties at age 30, like, not only because that would be weird, but also because, like, you're just, like, not, like, there's just too much chaos. A cautious person. I think that's right, Goober. Like, I can't, like, understand why we would put ourselves in, like, sort of a situation of just being constantly on edge without a baseline and homeostasis to which we return, right? Because, like, mindfulness urges us to, like, challenge ourselves and move forward, in whatever way, like, forward means, right? I just mean, like, expression and thoughtfulness, right? Like, not a linear progress per se. But Nietzsche seems to be like, I don't know, just spin in spirals and just make sure you keep going faster. And then if you don't die, that's success. And, like, that just feels really chaotic to me. I think if he was a D&D character, he would be chaotic neutral. And maybe that's what, like, really terrifies people. Like, there's no good alignment to, like, hold in place the chaos. Nietzsche is seen to interpret the history of philosophy in a uniquely physiological way, seeing it as guided by either healthy or diseased instincts. And this is why religion does not like Nietzsche. I think that Nietzsche also focuses a little bit, to my opinion, too much on, like, the sense that there is a objective truth. And he really, like, he fights that so intrinsically, right? That, like, there are places and people that make truths that alter our perceptions, and so, like, these are fictions created to live that we ascribe as truth. I think today we would probably use the term social construct for that. But yeah, this is the thing. So then the author goes on to say that, like, as a champion of instinct, Nietzsche makes an enemy of reason. He argues that reason was born out of a fear of the unknown and the need to alleviate this fear by imposing logic upon the world and making the unfamiliar familiar. And, like, yeah, I mean, I think that's very human. It's why cults are successful, right? The idea that you can go to someone and they have the answers. It's why people like gurus. They want to be able to, like, seek understanding and find, like, sense in a world of chaos. But I guess where I struggle with Nietzsche is that Nietzsche's like, and so we make the chaos. I'm like, there's already enough chaos in the world, dude. Like, we don't need to be here, like, throwing up our own crazy. Like, I want to just, like, respond to the chaos with thoughtfulness and objectivity and, like, a recognition that I don't need a myth in order to understand why lightning is coming down from the sky. Like lightning's chaotic enough. Why am I throwing my own bolts? I don't know. Like, it feels like too much. Like, we're trying too hard here. Yeah, rationality at any cost. Like, that's the thing. It's Goober, it's your point. It's like, it's too extreme. It's like, it's responding to a world of, like, social construct and myth to create a sense of security, the selling of security, and responding to that with, like, a speaking truth to power that is valid, and then just, like, going 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Yeah, I think that's why Nietzsche uses instinct as a word, Goober. I think he's trying to really create that animosity with, like, the religious elite, particularly in 19th century Germany. But I just, even now, when, like, we are reckoning with so many social constructs, right? Things that, whether it's the patriarchy or racism, like, there's so many things that, like, we have to deconstruct to get back to, like, real humanity. And that's so valid. And yet, instead of really engaging that discussion, Nietzsche is like, I don't know, stuff's broken, let's just be super broken. And I don't, like, instinct is useful. Having a gut response and listening to that, I think, is really helpful. But I think it should be tempered with a sense of self that is, like, strong and grounded. All of the isms suck. 100%. Yeah. The isms are rough, man. And I, like, in some ways I, like, applaud and understand Nietzsche's response to be like, you know, things are so broken that, like, I'm just gonna, like, recognize that these are problematic and go. Yeah, we have to to play our part in ending bigotry. Like, we have to engage in the conversation. I think if we just go full instinct, we sort of miss the opportunity to bring people, like, really engage with bigotry and even bigots and be like, look, this, like, doesn't have to be your whole personality. Yeah. And it's funny, like, I'm like, bigotry doesn't have to be your personality. And with Nietzsche, I'm like, rational thought, like, could be part of your personality. It doesn't have to be all instinct. And I think that, like, Nietzsche shows, like, he kind of reminds me of like a high school debater who's like, I know everything. I just figured out what cross-examination is. Let me talk for 7 minutes at you. And I'm just going to speak so quickly that you can't get a word in edgewise, and you have trouble, like, really, like, coming to the table. Like, I think that he just wants to create that moment of confrontation. And maybe there's, like, value in that, but then he argues against Judeo-Christian values because he like, sees that they were born out of a, like, reaction and resentment to probably nobles, although arguably our current moment, many of the richest people in the world are Judeo-Christian. But, like, that slave morality was really a response to being oppressed, right? Like, that's how you get the story of Moses. And Nietzsche looks at that and he's like, well, that's herd morality. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be. Like, you can recognize that an allegory or a story is meant to influence, but that doesn't mean it has no, like, philosophical value. I really struggle with Nietzsche. There's so much extremism in that view, even though, like, I think that some of his questions around, like, how does religion exercise its power? Why does it treat certain narratives in a certain way? Like, like Nietzsche, but a tempered Nietzsche. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a tempered Nietzsche is just, like, someone trying to question from a, like, scientific method perspective, but being open to surprise. And like, I think it's also, like, I think I like Nietzsche as a part of life, not as, like, a singular philosophy. I think that it would be like it is fun to go out drinking occasionally. It is not fun, in my opinion, to be drinking and going partying every single night. Like, it gets exhausting. It loses meaning. And yeah, you can keep building up a tolerance to the alcohol, but, like, what does that really get you besides dependence on a drug? Like, I really struggle with this idea that just, like, going hard all the time is the right answer. Like, I don't think that's true resilience. And so maybe by tempered Nietzsche we need, like, actually, like true temperament, like an actual tempered approach to life. And then I want to get to the next part of Nietzsche, because I think this is where Nietzsche is, like, most famous, is in the idea of, like, nihilism. And so, like, basically, Nietzsche, in his fight against religion, really hones in on this idea that, like, people like religion and the story of religion because it promises that their suffering will be rewarded in the afterlife, right? Like, this idea of heaven, or, like, if you live a really great life, you'll be reincarnated as, well, one of my favorite memes recently was that you get reincarnated as a cute little, like, tiny dog to two gay men that make you custom jackets that you can jump into and walk around in. I wish I remembered the creator's name, but I thought that was very cute. If reincarnation is a thing, I'm coming back as a house pet. Or maybe a cat. I feel like you get more agency as a cat. And you can go to the bathroom on your own. Like, that's a big one for me. But let's see. So because Nietzsche sees this, like, real, like, biggest problem with religion as being that it is telling people this fundamental lie that, like, their suffering is that they individually will be rewarded, right? It's not like suffering as a collective has some sort of moral good. It's like you do this so that you go to heaven. And so there's like a selfishness to it. And that, like, we don't, like, live for ourselves in that moment. And so that's what Nietzsche calls nihilism. It's the period when our drives and instincts work against us. And so, like, this is Nietzsche's, like, story, and kind of where you get into the instinct goober is that, like, the human animal and society becomes sick by turning against instinct power and strength. And he proclaims that God is dead. Because the scientific method and individualism and lack of faith and piety inherently, like, closes the door to, like, a pure, like, irrational following of Sky Daddy. And I don't know, like, it's like the extremism. Like, you can't have the scientific method and a sense of faith or religion, right? They're mutually exclusive in Nietzsche's mind. And so because of that, like, God is dead. So with the death of a creator, humanity no longer has assurance of the sanctity of what human values are good or what universal truths are. And since there's no guaranteed foundation, we should just become artists of our lives and create values that support our power. And that's where I take issue. It's like saying, hey, like, some of this religious stuff is problematic and we should probably rethink it. And with the scientific method, we have the tools to understand the world around us in new ways. But instead of, like, allowing that to be the way in which we then bring color to our lives, we just, like, give it all up. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, Rex is awesome. Like, how is someone who's against religion the Antichrist, right? Like, you can't be a counter of something you don't believe in. I really struggle with, like, yeah, I equate Nietzsche to, like, an antagonistic, like, high school guy who just, like, really wants to have something novel to say and is willing to, like, lock themselves into an extreme point of view in order to get that reaction out of people. And I sort of feel like, even though Nietzsche is no longer around, I'm anathema to, like, sort of giving him the satisfaction of being like, what a great idea. Because I just, like, it's too intense. Like, it's not, I don't want to live that way. Yeah. And I think this, like, this idea of it supporting the individual's power. Nietzsche is the OG debate bro. Yes, Goober, 100%. And I think that's why debate bros generally like Nietzsche, because it's like, it's the same sort of vibe. I think I struggle because, like, when he talks about power, it is a very, like, individualistic power where you, like, you can look down on people from the freedom you have in being so chaotic. There's a quote that says, "Standing in our power, we learn to forget easily, to have enemies, and even to respect our opponents." Nietzsche admires Greek tragedy because it testifies to a spirit that gives form and definition to an ecstatic energy of life through the creation of art without robbing it of its dynamism and raw instinct. The wisdom of affirming life through art provides the model for Nietzsche's idea of a, quote, grand style. And this is where I think the author kind of like takes what is otherwise just like extremism and is like, okay, but what if we like channeled this into art? And like, okay, I guess, but like Nietzsche isn't just saying like live as free spirits the way the author is kind of like implying. Like it's not just like the author goes so far as to say like we do the work of Nietzsche through self-creation and beauty, which like sure, like that's beautiful, totally 100%. But Nietzsche is specifically seeking power. Nietzsche is specifically responding to the Judeo-Christian value that says like we exist in order to like live in ways where our suffering has meaning, and in response to that is like, actually that really doesn't have any purpose, you can just go chaos. And like if you contained the grand style of Nietzsche to a canvas, like okay, sure, I guess, but like that's really just surrealism. And I like Nietzsche's not an artist, Nietzsche's a philosopher. Nietzsche is saying that like these values have like thoughtfulness for application in our lives, not just on a canvas. Yeah, I don't know. Because like, yeah, because he then goes on to say that like power and security finds expression in the grand style. Like power and security are words used to oppress. Like I don't understand. Like truly the OG debate, bro, where it's like I am so enlightened that I am more enlightened than you, and I am better than you, and watch me from a like below. Like I don't get it. You don't just get to think yourself out of existing in society because you've decided everyone else is missing this like grand realization of like the problematic nature of religion, which like truly was relatively revolutionary in 19th century Germany. Like I'm not discounting that, but I'm saying that like you're kind of like cutting out the hard part of living. It's that temperament. Like temperament is the thing. Figuring out how to be present and feel the feels and live life without giving in to the hard parts. Like that's the hard part of living. If you just like spin in circles and avoid the interaction, then like it's really not that hard. I don't know. I'm looking for a little bit more on like, oh, okay, so there is, Nietzsche posits a test. We're going to read this together. I have not pre-read it, so bear with me. What if some day or night a demon were to steal after you in your loneliest loneliness and say to you, again, Rex is awesome. Like, I guess we believe in demons, but like, we don't believe in religion, whatever. Anyway, what if some day or night a demon were to steal after you in your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more, and there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you all in the same succession and sequence if this thought gained possession of you, it would change you as you are, or perhaps crush you. The question in each and everything is, do you desire this once more and innumerable times more would lie upon your actions as greatest weight? Like, I mean, I don't want to do anything innumerable times more. Like, I want diversity in my experience. I want to evolve. I want, like, I don't want to relive anything that many times. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand the posit. Like, if a demon were to come to me and say, would you live this innumerable times? I don't care what it is. The answer is just no. I don't want to do the same thing for eternity. I want to, like, learn and experience different things and different emotions and different colors and places and like, I don't get it. Oh no, okay, so I don't know if I'm supposed to speak ill of the dead, because the next portion of this paragraph is the end of Nietzsche's life, because he dies at 44. He apparently has just, like, total mental collapse. And, like, okay, well, the mental collapse apparently may have been from syphilis. And I don't know if that's more or less of a poor speculation than the idea that he was pushed to madness by his overbearing mother and sister. What? What is this? What even is this? Oh. Yeah. So he basically gets put in a sanitarium and then is taken care of by his family, supposedly. And then he dies. But he's credited with the origin of existentialist and postmodern thought, so you can credit your the Antichrist is bullied by Yep, the Antichrist is bullied by his mom. Yes, well said. Apparently. Yeah, so strange. Yeah, the part of Nietzsche that's like, live your life to the fullest and express it joyfully and listen to your gut, like, all of that sounds lovely. Saying yes to what, like, gives you joy, I think makes sense, but I just, like, there's a temperament. There's like a sense of grounding that I feel like is missing in the have courage to be yourself. Like, yeah, have courage to be yourself. Figure out who yourself is and be willing to evolve that. I love the part of Nietzsche that's like, don't be crippled by self-doubt or self-consciousness or self-criticism. Like, those are easy places to go to. We often say the worst things to ourselves that no one else is thinking about us, let alone thinking those mean thoughts. And so, like, that part of Nietzsche, I'm like, yeah, like, say it, but oof, like, that was some serious burnout, like, just straight up mental collapse into a sanitarium. Wow. And to Rex's awesome's point, the Antichrist was bullied by his mom. Yeah. So this last part, I'm gonna finish on this note, I think. I really like this sort of exit that the author gives us. So I'm going to finish on that, but before I do, I'm going to leave y'all with a couple of questions for consideration. And please approach these with a sense of, thoughtfulness. We don't need to be going to the most extreme version of these, but understanding where our instincts make us most affirmed, I think, is useful. Okay, Goober, too far. So 2 questions that I think are really helpful, particularly, in February, we're dealing with seasonal depression, potentially, depending on where you're living. It's just kind of bleak and gray more often. It's the time of hot cocoa and blankets on the couch, hopefully a nice fireplace. For parts of the world right now, we're going to be getting a polar vortex, so I'm going to leave you with a couple of ideas and thoughts to ponder during this gray season. When do you feel energetic, robust, and powerful? Versus, when do you feel drained of your power? Do you judge yourself according to your own values or those set by others? How would you act if you had no fear, shame, or embarrassment? What are some of your most dominant instincts and essential needs? Nietzsche asks us to really think about, what would it look like to pursue those just a little bit more. I think Nietzsche would say a lot more. I'm saying a little bit more. So, last but not least, I'll leave you with this quote. Work to become who you are and love the fate you have created for yourself. Imagine yourself free, dancing at the edge of your fears, accepting life as it is, uncertain, painful, beautiful, surprising, and the greatest adventure you will ever have. And with that, Gobos, I leave you. Good night.